Hello and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode number 163. My guest in this episode is Sam Stokes, and Sam is a songwriter, musician, and singer, and we are here talking about a lot of things, but we will be covering her forthcoming album that will be slowly released throughout this year, and it's called Tales from Gaia, and this is a two-part conversation, so we cover a lot of territory. We cover not just the directness of the creation of the music, but the things that are going on in the background, and especially with Sam and her creative process and where she's at mentally and philosophically and spiritually. So beautiful conversation. I'm going to have a little snippet of a song from her new album. It's called Just Lovely. That'll be coming up in a minute. And this, if I didn't say this already, it's a two-part series, so there'll be another sound sample in the next episode, probably in two episodes. So thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed having Sam as a guest, and I love her music. So here's a little sample coming up, and then we'll get into the conversation. Slow down to And I'd like to welcome Sam Stokes to the IdeaCast interview series. Hi, Sam.
Hello. Hi, thank you for having me, Justin. Nice to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. And welcome to the YouTube and Spotify audience. And I will confess to the audience that when I reached out to Sam and we had some initial contact, I was thrilled because Sam, as you will discover in this conversation, is a musician, a singer, a songwriter. And that is my figurative jazz. You know, I mean, I just, through my whole life, I love music. I'm a musicphile. And so to have a musician here and a creative, in that vein, in that realm of the arts, I am just thrilled. So enough lauding praises, but I wanted to say that. And I would say to the audience, listen to this conversation. I will have, links for discovery in the description field. And if you like Sam's music or love Sam's music, show her some love and subscribe and connect and do those things that we do in the modern period with technology that help people, because Sam is absolutely worthy of those connections. So anyway, Sam, I've lauded a little bit of praises on you, but it's all genuine and sincere. I love music and I love your music, and I was glad to have discovered you and what you do. So there's that.
Thank you. And in the spirit of shout outs, I have to give a big shout out to my friend Judy, who kind of tapped me into this whole podcast world and kind of planted that seed about a week or two ago. So, you know, it's like all the things that connect, and I'm so happy to be here and loved our pre-chat and looking forward to chatting today.
Yeah. We could share with the audience. You and I had a really nice, productive, generative pre-chat, and we're coming off the heels of that too. In fact, this is the first time I've done a pre-meet and a discussion or a recorded conversation in one fell swoop. So glad to do it, because I think it will be generative, because you and I we just really vibed in that conversation with ideas, and so that's going to just transfer over to here. So, but what I think we should do for the audience sake and for my sake, for discovery, is to have you share a little narrative of background and where you're coming from and what you are doing presently.
Yeah. So my name is Sam Stokes. I am a musician, artist, songwriter. But beyond that, I also, just feel like the artists in our communities are oftentimes the ones that might be tapped into ideas that are maybe a little bit outside of the norm or outside of, social constructs that we already have. And so I think sometimes when we're tapped in creatively, it's also, my joy and my exploration is to explore some of those ideas beyond just music and just kind of plant seeds for ideas of like, wait, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And are we making the best choices that we can make for ourselves and for our futures? And just kind of exploring, I think, the general concept of what is humanity, what's our purpose here, and then for me it's like, how does music and art and people that are kind of in that tapped in sort of creative space how did they oftentimes bring us ideas? You know, a great example of this is like, you could watch any of those old Star Trek episodes, and how many things do we now have that's actual technology that was doing those things, you know, 40, 50, 60 years ago, maybe, that were ideas from creatives then. And now, you know, scientists and engineers and things have gone and made those real. So yeah, that's kind of my full, you know, explanation, I guess, of who I am.
Yeah, yeah, and I like that we can frame it in the sense that persons like yourself are, for the rest of us, generating and creating, but then we enter into this reciprocal relationship. I, as the consumer of the art or the music that is generated by folks like yourself, that I am not even vicariously experiencing. I am part of that. Then you know, I enter into relationship with that, with the art, with the music or theater or any of these things. And so, and it's an element of it. So it's like part of a system, right? The person that is engaging with that. So it's a wonderful process that we as humans are capable of. And thank goodness we have it, because I'd hate to think, and like you said, it's birthing things into the world through from the imaginal into our more mundane, you know, world, like you said, with things that we could, you know, we could never have thought of without this medium to transport it and to convey it. So
So to kind of piggyback on that, one of the things that I'm really doing a lot throughout this year, 2026, is I'm releasing this album that I've been working on for probably about the last 4 years, and it's called The Tale of Gaia. And I'm sure most of the folks here listening and watching your show know that Gaia is another word for planet Earth, or for Mother Earth, Mother Nature. And that song, so the whole album is called The Tale of Gaia. And that song specifically, there's a single of it that's already released. And that song, to your point, is a little bit jazzy. It's got this kind of like cool modern jazz kind of spiritual, just it's its own kind of just beautiful exploration of kind of this story of what does it look like if the planet Earth is also kind of on its own journey, and the planet Earth is its own consciousness, right? And its relationship to us humans and our impact to the earth, and kind of this like back and forth relationship. And so the whole album from start to finish is going to be released one single at a time until September. But within that story is we're kind of getting the whole arch. So each song is released one at a time, once a month. And we're getting really kind of this arc of almost like a soul that comes to earth or awakens on earth, or has this kind of, larger than life experience. And as I'm sure many people here have experienced so far, or in the early stages of that. And it's kind of this like joy and curiosity and wonder of like, oh my gosh, you know, like I think of like when we watch those movies of like Avatar, or these movies where someone's like, a human is exploring a new earth and they're just completely lost in the wonder of it. It's like we forget that we can have that exact same wonder with our own planet. And that a lot of those things that are even shown to be otherworldly are filmed on our planet. And there's so much like beauty here. So the album kind of explores like, what does humanity look like? What does the wonder and exploration look like? And then it kind of goes through like the classic journey of like complete joy, and then like the dark night of the soul, and then this like fight and grit and this strength that comes from it. And then this like journey that we have with forgiveness, this playfulness of kind of like let it all go. And then eventually this kind of understanding of like, oh, whoa, like we are all connected and we are all mirrors of each other. And, you know, that which I do unto you, I do unto myself kind of thing. And so it's this, all of a sudden, like this matrix falls apart and we see this interconnectedness. And so that's kind of the journey that we're on with this album. And part 3 is coming out in March. And we're just kind of exploring the whole album together, one part of the story at a time.
Yeah. And I watched the song that you referenced with Gaia, and that's gorgeous. And then was it Lay on the Grass? Was that the one that just came out last in that sequence? And then Green Beans is coming out next, right? And okay,
yes.
yeah, and so there's a little to me, I took a little fun humor out of Green Beans, like is kind of interpreting it maybe through my own lens, but I love Lay on the Grass because I think like the chorus is like, I'm gonna go reconnect with my friends in the real world, right? And I think that's so timely, right? That you're showing that. So yeah, I love that there's layers of messaging and narrative and symbols and signifiers in the music itself, because I think, as we talked about in our pre-meet, that this is a communication, and that your messaging imbues itself on the psyche, the broad psyche, like the milieu or whatever. So it's a powerful medium. It's a powerful medium.
Yeah, and my thing is also, I just think of how grateful I have been, and that was something we, chatted about a little bit too. I just think of how grateful I've been for some songs that have, I just think like, wow, I'm so happy Stevie Wonder was like alive, and that he didn't let anything prevent him from recording music and playing music, and that he decided to share these incredible gems with us. It's like, I think of like, another great one for me personally is like Stevie Nicks' song Landslide. And it's like, anytime I hear that song out in the world, I just have like a full stop, and it just helps me like recenter. And I just think, oh my gosh, I'm so glad she decided to write that song. She decided to record it. She decided to, produce it, and they decided to share it. And so I think of it in those kind of terms. So for me, it's, when I think of a song like Lay on Grass, it's like, hey, like, I want this to be your soundtrack for your life. So you're wanting to hang out with your friends, and you're wanting to go and have this experience, like, yes, amazing. Like, here is something that if you heard it, it might, awaken that consciousness that you say, oh my gosh, I just heard Lay on Grass. I have to like put my phone away and just watch this sunset, right? Oh, okay. That's how music, I think, in its best form works. It's these like little reminders, and we all have had that experience of a song that makes us think of someone that's passed away, or it makes us think of someone that we loved, or it makes us think of an old romance that we had or something, but it can like help us reconnect to ourselves. And that to me is just like, when a song can do that, and I don't claim to say that any of my songs have reached that level, but that's the intention, at least, that I put into creating the music.
And that is so incredibly powerful. And I would say, even if one soul comes to you and says, Sam, this song puts me in a particular place, in a particular headspace, or a particular emotion space, and thank you. And you'll get multiple people doing that, I'm sure. I'm not psychic, but but anyway, just to have that one moment or exchange that you're like, oh my God. Though I to the audience, I sent Sam a couple of songs that really light me up, and in the comments, it'll tear your heart out, because like I was telling you, and so I'll reveal to the audience, Lisa Gerard, Sanvi and I Am Your Shadow, really powerful song. It's just her singing. And in the comments, it's like, yeah, my husband introduced me to this song, and he just passed from cancer. And it's like, or it's just the memories. And so this is the hook that you're talking about. And my God, that's just, so powerful, that it has that effect. In anchoring us in time and space and all these things.
Even like, I think about a song like What a Wonderful World, and it's like, oh, thank you so much, person who received or wrote that song. And that's a gift for the rest of us. Thank you so much. Because that song, every time I hear it, just thank you. Don't worry and be happy, for that super hooky. Whenever you're feeling stressed, you just kind of like whistle that to yourself, and you're like, oh, well, I'm not going to worry about that much anymore. And I it's just such a beautiful gift. And what's cool about it is we really are living in this recorded music has only existed about 100 years. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very, just kind of like television and film, it's a very young and new art form. So, the fact that we're able to hear Frank Sinatra's voice, a man that I never got to see live, but I'm
Right.
able to hear his voice, and not just his voice, I can hear when he smiles in the middle of the song. Oh, I mean, those moments and those kind of things, it's just, it really is where magic and music really overlap,
Yeah, yeah, and the added beauty, and I'm a huge Frank Sinatra fan, and that is that we see him in film. And so in high school, I sort of found him in late, like before I graduated from high school, music, and then I started watching his films, and I'd like, oh, now I'm knowing a little bit more. Of course, he's playing a character, but you see the body, you see the actions, the way he conveys his emotion. And so, yeah, that's even a further connection. And then you go back and listen to the music, and you're like, God, Frank, you and your songwriting team.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
like you really
best.
nailed it. Yeah,
The
you really
best,
nailed it. You nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
One share I'll do with you is
Yeah.
and we'll talk about the shadow and things like that in this conversation. But for me, a moment I had with music, in my early 20s, I was deeply nihilistic, deeply self-destructive, deeply dark. Like I was dancing with that shadow all the time. And I didn't mind. I loved my hellscape. But anyway, so there was a band that I liked that was equally, it resonated that. And it was called Skinny Puppy. And I don't advise anybody to listen to them because unless you're strange. But anyway, so for years, that was my fount rather, to express this horror, this hellscape. And about 8 years ago, I got to meet Kevin Ogilvy, who was the singer, the front vocalist person for Skinny Puppy. And we had I did the meet and greet, and we had a conversation, and he battled with depression his whole life, and he struggles, and he has all these things. So I know his demons, his shadow, it was out there, and I was, connecting to it, not in a way so that I'd end it all or whatever. No, it was just so that I could have that catharsis, but meeting the man and speaking with him and seeing his vulnerability and his frailty, because the character, the persona that's Nivek Ogre is his little stage name. And it's a nightmare. It's surreal. It's horror. It's all, and part of their thing was, is they were there to talk about vivisection, misogyny, and all these horrible social things that want to penetrate the thick heads of people, who are not paying attention. So anyway, that was the message, but there was also this undertone of suffering. And so I lamped on it, and meeting him was, closing the circle. And it was just so fun. And so, cause, I was in a much better space. He was in a reasonably better space. So anyway, just long story, but those moments are so valuable.
I think it's also one of the things that I grapple with within the music industry and within, any entertainment industry. But I think the music industry in particular can really struggle with this, which is you create a persona. The world loves that. And let's say that persona is a version of you when you're 18 or you're 20. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, that's the thing that is commercially checked off. People are like, we love this. This is great. Amazing. That's the brand. But you're a soul on a journey. You're here to expand and to grow and to change. But a brand likes to be dependable. And I remember having so many conversations, and even when I do, sometimes I mentor other artists or have conversations with them, and I'm like, look, be really intentional about who you are introducing yourself to the world to, because if your thing is, heartbreak, teeny bopper, boyfriend songs, or, depression, metal, aggressive songs, that can become this cage that you'll never be able to escape from, and because it might not allow you to grow, right? It might not allow you to expand beyond that. And some artists, of course, are successful with that. But another one is like Frank Sinatra. It's like he peaked as the man in the tux and this perfect big band thing. And that's basically what he did for 50 years. And people love that about him. But he went through, if you think about it, he went through the 60s, the 70s, all the hippie stuff. He went through all of those eras, 80s, hair metal, the 90s. I think he was still probably running the 90s, grunge, right? And he went through all of these eras of music. but he was still presenting the same guy that he was when he was 20. And sometimes I think, okay, on the one hand, that's commercially very successful and it's dependable and people are like, this is what I really love. But sometimes when we want to go on our own journey to grow or evolve or change from that, it's like, how do we do that with also, finding that commercial or at the very least, like having jobs from it, and it's a fascinating exploration, but I see that a lot too with, especially like younger women, like, and Phineas has even talked about it too, this idea of like, if you only write songs about, like, if you only write breakup songs and you become famous for breakup songs, then you got to be getting into a lot of relationships and having a lot of breakups in order to sustain. And he was like, I can't, like, I like my life. I like my girlfriend. I don't want to break up with her just to write another hit song. Okay, what does that now, look like in order to be able to, put my own journey within reflection of, what it is, the art that I'm making. So,
yeah. No, and I'm struggling as you're saying this to think of a band that and again, I love music. I'm all over the spectrum. A band that has darted about thematically, constitutively in terms of maybe not the style of the music, but just the mood and the presence and the message and the intent.
The only one, there's two that come to mind, and they really loved each other, and that's Miles Davis and Joni Mitchell.
Okay.
But with their explorations of their own personal growth and there was massive commercial failures, right? There was massive things that they did that were so different, and they were pushing the envelope artistically, but the market didn't understand it because they were like, wait a minute. And people are people. They're habitual. They like things, to be the same. They like them to sound the same taste. But to their credit, and Jimi Hendrix, right before he passed away, he was in the process of like creating this whole new sound. Maybe the best example of like a band, even though they were together for a short amount of time, I think their total career was like 9 or 10 years, is the Beatles, and they, I think, really, where they started versus where they ended, like, and them writing all their own songs and really being like, there wasn't a team of marketers, telling them what they should do or not do. Like, they were really exploring that, but it wasn't something that they did over 50 or 60 years, right? It was a, pretty condensed time frame.
Yeah, and their talent afforded them the capacity to have this transmutability or this fluidity, I think, because you're right. I mean, you think of 1962 to 64 Beatles, and then there's, the introduction of marijuana and LSD, and then there's those Beatles, and then there's the independent careers that they all, went on, and Paul McCartney and Wings was really different. John Lennon, was able to be himself more, and George Harrison blossomed, and Ringo went and did project work. So so it's funny how our expression is the enabling constraints of like the Beatles, and then your independent careers that those enabling constraints create Beatle things, and then when the Beatle thing is gone, that you can be the Paul McCartney and Wings or John Lennon doing his solo career. And I thought of one guy, Frank Zappa, is a guy who was a total chameleon. And I have like 40 something Zappa albums. But he was such he was a jerk, but he was a genius, and so he had that license to be jazz, to be punky, to be hard rock, to be psychedelic acid rock kind of thing. And even some of pseudo classical, because he was into Boré or whatever that weird French composer was. So he was all over the map too. So yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, and I almost want to say Tool had their moments too with the way their sound is Tool, but then the themes in like Numina and what was it, Lateralis and all these other things, they were exploring themes and things like that. So yeah, I guess now that I'm thinking about it a little more. And one guy that I like, who went kind of like orthogonal to music styles was his stage name is Rajaram. And so right now he's a psytrance DJ. But he was in the Goa scene when Goa Gill or whatever back in the early 90s, and they were doing all that, stuff in India. And then, but in the 70s, he was British acid rock. So he was a flautist. He was a classically trained flautist. And so Rajaram, or I can't remember his British name, but he did that, and then he went to Goa, and then he went into Schwangal with Simon Pishford or whatever, which is kind of a really neat hybrid band. It's yeah, and they're they're real psychedelic kind of, but trancey and just very experimental and blah blah blah. And then now Rajaram, he may be retired, but he was doing psytrance for a while, so he was just DJing and getting the kids to bounce and things like that. So he's a fascinating character that had iterative career turns and things like that. So
yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
cool.
There's so much creativity out there, right? But we'll bring it back, and I want to bring it back to you. And you have let's talk about the creative process of this album that you've produced. I believe there was the narrative in researching you was that you had gone to Boston to record. You crowdfunded, and you actually were fortunate and blessed enough to have all the capital needed to do that. And you had the two gentlemen, I'm sorry I don't remember their names, but the Sunfire is Sam Stokes and Sunfire. So can you unpack a little bit of that and maybe some insights into the creative process, if you will?
Yes. So the live band that I play with, and we do a lot of things here in LA, is called Sam Stokes and the Sunfires. And that's with my most lovely, amazing, wonderful friends, Carl Vincent on bass and MD Bordy on the drums. And we do a ton of live shows in and around LA. And the whole idea with that experience is, and what we've been doing a lot lately, is also bringing in guest artists to come in and just kind of sit in on our shows. And the whole idea is that there's no rehearsal. So we say, look, here's kind of the framework. And so stylistically, our songs are kind of pop rock, I would say, but they have this jazz undertone. And the jazz kind of undertone is saying, look, we have sections. There's an A section, there's a B section. We have a loose framework of how the song is going to go, but we're going to be in tune together to see how long we want to do something. So the goal is that every time you come to a show, it's going to sound a little bit different. There's going to be a little bit different choices, and we get folks coming to shows over and over and over again, because even though we might play the same songs, there's a excitement that it's ooh, how is it going to sound tonight? What is it going to look like tonight? So that's something that we take great care and attention to curate when we do the live shows. And then last year, I was fortunate enough, I applied for one of those Instagram ads, hey, you could be one of this other or whatever, sent it in, and I get a response 2 days later, we would love to work with you. And I was amazing. And it was a studio in Boston called Plaid Dog Recording. They've been around for, I think, 10 or 15 years, and just phenomenal. As lovely as an experience could be, if you're an artist and you're looking for a studio, their specialty, and I think the thing that was really appealing to me is you as an artist keep all of your master rights. So you keep all of your rights. It's the thing that Taylor Swift was in all of these battles over the last years to get her rights back.
Right.
You keep your rights. It's not a record label. It's a recording studio. But what they do is they help artists crowdfund their projects before they even come in and before they even start. And so what that means is that artists don't have to foot the bill themselves. And they also get a sense of oh, I already know what is paid for in advance. So I know the scope of this project in advance. And then for that project, because it was out in Boston, I played with their studio musicians who were delightful and amazing and just the most wonderful people ever. And the producer, Mike Davidson, is just as brilliant can be. I mean, really, it's the whole studio is his project. That concept has the opportunity to really be a new paradigm for how artists can record high quality studio projects, but have kind of that structural support in advance, because we raised between $9,000 and $10,000, so we raised a good amount of money that I personally would not have been able to have afford. And what was really exciting too was that through that project, we were in the middle of the Palisades fire in LA. So there was like all of these fires. There was like this whole, global conversation around SoCal and the fires and all this kind of stuff. So it was beautiful being able to record, some of these like little videos of going out into the forests in LA with a local nonprofit called Tree People. And so for folks who donated $50 or more, I went by myself with this group and planted trees for each person. So it was really kind of fun and I never realized it before, but I have so many friends that live in Europe and live in other places. And the excitement that they had that there was a tree planted for them in LA, it didn't strike me as something that would be that interesting to someone, but they were so excited and they were so happy and they were like, there's a tree for me over. And I was like,
part of me lives.
It's so cool, Yeah. So that's kind of, a little bit of what's been going on the last year. So, and then part of this album, so not 100% of the album was recorded with Plaid Dog. 6 of the 9 songs were recorded and mixed and mastered through Plaid Dog. And then I had 3 other songs that I was working on with other co-writers and producers last year that just fit perfectly into the whole story. And so that's kind of what makes up this whole 9 song album.
Yeah. So fascinating to me as an outsider and I will attest that in listening to the tracks that have been released so far, and I come at this from a folksy, intuitive kind of perspective, that the mixing and the engineering and the sound quality is just beautiful. It's really well done, and just again, somebody who's just an observer who just has an appreciation. So yeah, I picked up on that in listening, to that with these medium quality headphones. They're not perfect, but they're acceptable, I suppose. And so anyway, just a note on the success of the production.
Thank you. Yeah, no, Mike is the best. And I think the thing was really exciting for me going into that, because you have to imagine, I was doing this whole process and it was all through Zoom calls and all through things that you're meeting people online and you're like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know what, I don't know what this experience is going to be. I also say too, when you play music with other people, it's like kids in a sandbox, and some people build sandcastles together and some kids just throw sand at each other. And you don't necessarily know how that's going to flow with other musicians. So I was like, okay, what's this going to be like? And I just had this like intuitive download, and I'd never approached it this way specifically before, but I realized I just have to have the container. I'm not here to tell the drummer what to play. I'm not here to tell the guitar player what to play. I'm not here to tell the violinist what to play. Like, I'm here to I wrote the song, or received the song, more honestly said, and I have the container of this song. But truthfully, this is really, I want every musician to find themselves in the song. So my only job is to make sure that we're not distracting from the song. Anything that we do has to add to it. But if it distracts, I'm just here to kind of help be the steward of the song, the midwife of the song. Right. But other than that, it's like, I'm not the type, and a lot of musicians are very different with that. There's some musicians who are like, hear these exact notes and play these exact parts, and I want it exactly this way, which is fantastic. That's one process. But for me, I realized like, I actually just love the idea of the musicians finding themselves within the song, that they get lost and they come to life and they find the thing that really gels with them. And so what's cool about that is that every group of musicians that might play these songs has their own interpretation of it. And that's my favorite thing, because I believe that, going back to Frank Sinatra again, it's like, there is the song Fly Me to the Moon, and that song can exist as an a cappella. It can exist as just someone playing on piano. It can exist in a trio. It can exist in a big band. It can exist in an orchestral. Like, it can exist in all of these different formats. It can exist as a Latin kind of feel. It can exist as I don't know if a punk rock feel. I haven't heard that. I don't know how that would
You could
sound.
do kind of a ska kind of
Yeah,
punky thing.
it, it could be cool. Um,
Yeah.
but there's like, there's like the song, and then there's all these interpretations. And of course, Fly Me to the Moon, we will probably think of the Frank Sinatra classic big band one,
Right.
but
Right.
that doesn't limit it from having these different, um, it's
Reimagining,
like a life
maybe?
of, yeah, reimagining, like their lives of their own. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the goal is, you just surrender and say, okay, what is this? And if one person was different in the room on the day of recording, if one person was swapped out or one thing was, you would have a completely different product. And so just being able to surrender to like, okay, what are we going to just capture today? And I don't have a finished image that I'm trying to get to. I'm
Hmm.
just here to play in the sand together and let's see what we build.
Right. Right. It's coming to my mind that in sort of the classic procedure of creating an album, creating music, that bands will go and support the album on tours and so forth. So, what are your sentiments on that? Are you going to keep this online or virtual in terms of its radiance into the public consciousness, or are you going to go out and play a few gigs in different places beyond the confines of Los Angeles? Come on up. My cat is trying to join in the.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
that's a great
my little
question.
producer somewhere.
Oh,
Well, get up here. Get up. Come on. No, don't. I'm sorry. I'm breaking up the
um,
chat.
yeah, that's a great question. To be perfectly honest, I I would love nothing more than to go on tour. Full
Mm-hmm.
stop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also, uh, I find that it can be such a financial, and we hear more and more stories, even for really, really big, well-known acts. It can be such a financial investment. And so for me, I'm personally in a place of like, I'm really focusing this year of like building the presence online because that's something
Right.
that's not intuitively where I'm at. But what was fascinating was like, doing a lot of shows in person, which is what I love more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, sometimes it doesn't necessarily transfer sometimes one to the other. Sometimes it does, but I'd have friends with 80,000 followers and we book a show or something together and they'd have one person show up. I was like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
one person shows up. And then you'd have somebody else with 200 followers and they'd have 20 people show up. And I was like, okay, hold on. This is not, quite lining up. But that being said, I think for me, uh, I found that this year my focus has really been like, I want to expand. I want to kind of reach more of the global community online to really
Mm-hmm.
dedicate the time and energy to growing that pillar of what this is. And as that grows and as it expands, if demand should appear of like, hey, we're ready, like, yeah, you better believe it. We are ready. Like, let's
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I think it's also, just being mindful and understanding, uh, it's like, I don't want to do things for the sake of like an ego validation or for the sake of
Yeah.
like, it's like, wait a minute, like if there's demand there and if it's like, please come to this, it's like, okay, cool, let's go.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So to be determined. Yeah.
Right. And that gets my little Imagineering juices flowing. And it's like, I totally see that point that if you're not some major, like with a lot of backing, like this major presence, like Metallica goes out at 40 something years and they're still filling stadiums, playing the
Sure.
same stuff over and over. And I loved Metallica in the 80s. I still do. But
Yeah.
anyway, they're an example of this thing that has a draw, has a kinetic force that just, but I'm wondering if it would be lovely to know that in Denver or other medium to large markets that there is a club that caters to a genre more than a particular individual. And, so we have this thoughtful, folky, rock, sort of pop rock, folky, but, meaningful. And that those are the acts that come through, and that venue is it has the archetypal stance, that someone like yourself can go in there and the crowd will show up because there was another act the week before that's close or approximate to the vibe that you have. And now that would be amazing, because then you don't have to have that crisis of going to a club and there's one person, and I've been to concerts like that where it's like, are you effing kidding me? This person's amazing. Where is
I know.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I always tell artists too, I'm like, that is a skill in and of itself, of like, okay, cool. How do we fully connect and exchange with the room that we're in? And how do we fully, because it is like, it is an energetic exchange. It is okay, cool. One thing that I love to do before shows is, really pray and tap in and say, who needs this message right now in this room? And who can I be of service to connect whatever we're going to do tonight? How do we connect to these people? And if it's, a totally packed house and it's an amazing big thing, it's like, you might have a great show and then two people come up and are like, oh my gosh, that was for me. And you're like, cool. Okay. That was for you. Like, there you go. Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, long story short, would love to go on tour and would be ready at any moment to do it. And just kind of seeing how it unfolds. But I feel like being able to really connect and grow things online has been definitely a focus of mine this year.
Yeah, for sure. And it's almost, and this is already being done, of course, there's nothing novel, but the hybrid of you doing live streams, of you being in an audience with an audience, but people around the world can tune in, and you can grow your support and viewership that way too, which is safe and convenient. It's convenient. So maybe that's the, it's not prescriptive that I'm saying this. I'm just imagining all of this. So, cause it's just so fun and creative. But, now, one thing I'd like to pivot to, that we had talked about in the pre-meet, and I think it is absolutely something that needs to be brought up, is you had told, a story that was a bit harrowing, and I think it's good to share. But it speaks to an idea about the consciousness of music creation and the artists that create music. And so I want to open that door, and we'll talk about what you call conscious tripping, or that's a statement that is derived from this matter that we're going to talk about. So I'll hand it off to you and take it where you want to take it.
Yeah. No, thank you. So one of the songs, it's the third song of this story is called Green Beans. Mm-hmm. And that song kind of came to me after I experienced what I would call a textbook, trauma event. And I say that because I don't necessarily think it's not necessary to go into all of the details of it, but more or less, I kind of unexpectedly on a nice, Monday afternoon at a friend's house found a friend of mine overdosed from a drug overdose and had passed away. And it was like I said, it's like a textbook traumatic event. And I, at the same moment, had kind of this, it was 2020, so it was December 2020. It was, LA, kind of eerie, but kind of peaceful. Like there's less action, but people are kind of bored and, and that year, which was funny, I was really digging into my artistry. I grew up, I had alcohol and stuff like that a little bit over the years, but I never experienced or had any interest in drugs per se. But as I was digging into artistry, I felt like there was this kind of myth, I guess I would call it, that great artists and transcendent and thoughtful artists, especially songwriters, right? So people that are able to deliver fantastic performances, but then also songwriters, that are receiving these songs, there was kind of this myth that like, that substances were kind of the gateway to it. So whether it was psychedelics, marijuana, whatever it was, it kind of felt like that was part of the mythos of an artist. And for me, I felt personally not interested by any of those things. And I'm very grateful that those things didn't interest me per se. But in the year of 2020, I was like, well, let me smoke a little marijuana. Let me see if this does anything for me creatively, like, let me, and I literally smoked a couple joints. Like, it wasn't like I, went out and was like trying all the things.
Yeah.
But in that moment, on that day when my friend passed away, I was at the same time kind of having this like spiritual, like other sense kind of coming online. So much so that like the day before, I remember just like crying on the floor in my parents' kitchen, just sensing like something terrible is about to happen. And they kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, no, I really can sense that something is not good. And they were like, no, you're fine. And then the next day, found my friend. And with that, kind of like unlocked this whole thing. And so I felt like this immediate kind of clear message from God, universe, whatever you want to call it, that was really saying, hey, you can tap into these like divine transcendent spaces and you don't need any substances. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, thank you for that confirmation, because I was not particularly interested, but now I'm curious what that looks like. And so as a result, I experienced probably about 6 months of PTSD and, all of the kind of aftermath of that. But with that came also this very intentional rewiring of my brain. It came also this, as I've described before, it's like this X-Men level of like a sixth sense, like a new sense where you're like, oh, and you feel like you have to go to X-Men school to kind of learn what are these new senses? What is this new thing? How do I object float? How do I make it, like trying to kind of understand that. And at the same time, being very conscious to take small steps, because I also found, I don't want to go too fast and become untethered from my body. I was like, I don't want to go too fast and feel like I'm experiencing too much that I can't sustain or house this experience. So with that came kind of an exploration of, I don't know if other people use this term very much. A friend of mine, I think we talked about it for the first time in like 2022 or something, which is the idea of conscious tripping. And for me, it was like, oh, what does it look like to tap into the divine, to basically shut off the brain, right? To tap into that flow state, but like literally drinking like some water, you know what I mean? Literally just with your breath, with meditation. Because I think what a lot of those substances do is they bypass our monkey mind, which is why we can get to those kind of divine transcendent spaces.
Right.
But it's like, they can also have really long lasting side effects, or they can be overused or misused. I'm not saying that they're like totally terrible, and each will be on their own journey. For some, they'll say, no, I feel called to like explore these substances, and that's gonna like, that's amazing. Yeah. Totally, everyone's on their own experience. Yeah. But for myself, I was like, oh, I'm really curious to like how to write songs or receive songs and how to tap into that space. And, like even at the level of like, okay, I can share this story. I was like, like even at the level of like when you tap into that space and you're performing on stage and you start getting all these pings of people's thoughts in the audience. Okay. So you're in the middle of performing and you're getting these like pings and you're like, what is going on? And there was one time where I was performing at the Hotel Cafe a couple years ago in LA. And I remember I was singing, I was on stage by myself, and I get this ping from my husband in the middle of performing. He was like, I saw her naked today. And I was like, so confused. I was like, what? You know, I'm in the middle of singing. I'm in the middle of performing. I was like, that is so distracting. And I go up and ask him afterwards. He's like, did you think that while I was singing? He was like, yes. I was like, oh.
Such a male thought too. Yeah.
But then I was like, I can't be mad at you for like having your own thoughts. And I was like, so sorry.
That's true. That's true, right? There's a boundary there.
And
like, hey, it's flattering, right? Like your husband's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice, but that thing can happen where you're there and you're in this space, and that was the part that was the X-Men, where you're like walking into your room and you're now getting all of these pings, and you're like, whoa, how do I now collect this and now, you know, redirect this? And that has been a skill and a process unto itself as well.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. Because it's got to be off-putting at first. You're like, what the hell is this? Yeah, right.
Oh,
I only had one. Yeah. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I mean, it is so disorienting. The best metaphor I could come up with was like, I don't know if you've seen those videos of people that have, that are like colorblind, and then they put on glasses and they see color for the first time.
Oh, okay.
And these videos are like, oh, they're so beautiful, you know, because it'd be adults that have only seen like very muted tones, and then all of a sudden they see these vibrant colors. That was what my experience felt like. It felt like I was in this like muted kind of black and white, and then all of a sudden you're like, what is that? That looks like orange. But then you're asking all your people around you, and they're like, that's gray. And you're like, what? No, that's orange. And that's purple. And that's blue. And people around you are like, yeah, I'm saying black and white. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's the part where you're like, oh, I don't want to become distethered, right? Like, I don't want to be, or untethered. I don't want to become like disconnected, because all of a sudden I'm seeing all these colors and I'm seeing these new things and I'm having these new perceptions, right? This new sensory input. And then trying to find like support and the framework around you to say, you're totally okay. You're not alone. You are not losing your mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, cool. What does that look like? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. No, I was just going to mention that, I was searching my back catalog when you were talking about that moment that precipitated or the genesis of your newfound capacity. And I remember on September 10th, 2001, I was driving down the road 24 hours before September 11th.
Yeah.
24 hours before, in my head, there was a flood of sirens and police and ambulances and all this stuff. And I'm driving, and it's like I'm watching it and I didn't crash or anything. And then the Hail Mary prayer, and I'm not religious. The Hail Mary prayer just kept repeating in my head. So weird. So 24 hours later, or less than that, the September 11th happened, and I thought, oh shit, you know, I thought back to what I had experienced the day before, and I'm like, wow, time is leaky and permeable, you know, or our psychic capacity, you know, our psychological capacity is permeable and leaky. You know, that's the only thing I could, you know, think of is it's like, wow, because it was such a powerful event, and so it just bled into the day before, and it certainly has been bleeding forward ever since. So I'll never forget that though, because it was so profound, and I didn't even dismiss it. I was like, okay, whatever this is, I don't think it was a, you know, hallucination, like, you know, and sorry to schizophrenics, but, you know, like one of those things that happens, that the mind is just, you know, it's firing in weird and novel ways. Because I'd done a lot of acid, and I remember, you know, because I've had friends who are schizophrenic who have taken acid, and they're like, yeah, there's a little bit of similarity there, although acid's fun and schizophrenia is not. And so, but anyway, that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, you know, is this my penitence for, you know, taking acid or something? But no. It was the leakiness of that event moving back, you know, the day before. So wow, yeah. So, but unfortunately, I didn't lamp onto it. It didn't carry with me. I'd love to have that capacity to some extent or another. But anyway, so we'll see. Maybe I'm still young enough. It might kick in at some point. But anyway, that's profound that you have that though.
Yeah, and it's a skill that it's like a muscle, it's like you could win an Olympic for a gold medal for, the fastest runner. But if you, sat on your couch for the next 10 years, you're probably not going to win another Olympic gold. So, it's like anything, I think any of those muscles can ebb and flow depending on how much time and energy. And there were moments for me where, it was almost getting too much. And I was just like, okay, hold on, slow down. Like let's slow this down. Cause, I want to take this in little steps. And then also, I think to an extent, being able to say, hey, I don't need that, like maybe it means I don't, reach some level of enlightenment, or I don't reach some awareness or whatever. But like, I think also saying, hey, you know how far or how much am I willing to expand within because it's really just our perception of reality, right? So you're just like,
Yeah.
Okay, like I have a girlfriend, and she's had this experience since she was like 12 or 13, where she could see like 7 of her spirit guides, like in kind of human form, walking around all the time. And we were sitting in a Starbucks, and she saw all 7 of them. And like, she was like, yeah, I kind of know who all they are, but there's like this one woman who's like a little bit more clouded, and I don't know who she is. And I was like, I don't know if I need that. I was like,
Yeah, right. It's very distracting.
And it seemed like it was something that was built into her perception of reality, of her DNA. And I'm saying this is like, she is the most grounded, stable, clear-minded, thoughtful individual. It was just part of her software. And I was like, I don't know if I need that specific install, but cool. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing that's her experience.
Right. And something to offer out as a perhaps a convergence or a tie-in is when you have people who practice mindfulness and meditation for long periods, and they get into that space where they'll have that non-dual awareness, where they get rid of, like you said, they get rid of the executive ego, they get rid of the monkey mind, and they suddenly realize the no self, and in that, that you could call it awakening, enlightenment, or whatever, but like they say, the day before you awaken, you chop wood, carry water. The day after you chop wood, carry water. Whatever, who cares? But just having that salience, that new frame, that because a lot of people who say, and I've been close. I've been to like the minimal self kind of experience where I'm not me anymore, and thank God, and all this kind of thing. But the people who go further, they where am I going? That it was more real than real. It was more lucid than lucid. It was more familiar than the familiar, right? And so I think that kind of corresponds a little bit to this access or this expansion that affords people the capacity to be more visually. The acuity is different, so wherein they may see things or persons or whatever you want to call it, or it's premonitive in a sense that the probabilistic nature of future coalescing into things, they have a read on it better than the rest of us would, especially those of us who aren't sitting looking at our phones all day.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to tie in, because I remember we talked about this a little bit earlier, and wanted to kind of clue that in is, a big part of that rewiring of the brain was for me. So like that PTSD year and that whole thing was, these new senses, that was like the dark night of the soul. And it was like, I was having premonitions like a whole week before my uncle passed away. I kept hearing like, grieving is an important process to show you love someone. And I keep hearing this. I'm like, who is this about? And I kept thinking, oh, this is a message for a friend of mine. So I got to be open and see who am I supposed to deliver this message to. And then all of a sudden, one day, my family's sitting around, having it was 4th of July, nice afternoon, and we get a phone call that my uncle suddenly passed away. And I was like, oh, that week long of message was for me. Okay, got it. And I think in going through kind of that process, that dark night of the soul, the kind of like tingly, buzzy kind of feeling, I I think with that also came this individuation, right? This Carl Jung, like, oh, I am now really looking, because I all of a sudden started really understanding this choice is causing this reaction, and this choice is causing this experience. And all of a sudden I was like, I am hurting myself. I'm hurting other people around me because I'm making these unconscious choices. And this is like, it felt like it was spiraling out of control. And I was like, okay, let's get really small and let's really rewire the brain, right? So let's journal, let's meditate. We're going to read books. We're going to look at all this stuff. And a huge part of that was, this kind of concept of the shadow self, this kind of, as if there was like a box, right? And there's these corners of our shadows. As it becomes a circle, all of a sudden those shadows have nowhere to go. So we're now in this like, oh, how do I see these parts of myself that I used to run away from? And instead of like shame them or make them feel small or push them away or feel guilty or resentful of them, how do I invite them to tea? And how do I love them and integrate them and really challenge, big challenge that I started to integrate was, oh, that thing really triggered me, or that didn't feel good, or, this thing got wonky, this interaction or this thing. Let me sit with it. And it's not a cave. I'm not just going to keep digging into the darkness. It's a tunnel. So let me just sit with it and allow the mind to just, and the spirit to move through it until and so it would be like, I'm just going to sit and meditate on this sometimes an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, until I could find, oh, that is the hope. That's the love. Oh my gosh, that is the grace I need to show myself, or I need to show that other person. Oh my gosh, I made that choice because of this wound that I had and I didn't realize I had. Oh, okay, hold on. Let me integrate that. And now, instead of being reactive, let me make a conscious new choice that I might have ever made in my life. That choice I might have not have ever felt like an option before because I never felt like I had that tool before. Okay, now let me make this new choice. And this new choice is going to lead now to a new way that this scenario can play out. And I think that's, there's this great quote that I heard once where it was like, if you're going to a psychic, a great psychic has to first examine your level of consciousness. Because if you're seemingly unconscious, the psychic's going to come in and say, look, this is going to happen to you in 5 years, and this is 10 years, and this is in 30 years. You are on this path. This is so easy to see. And we've all had friends like that, right? We've all had, girlfriends or guy friends where we're just like, well, yeah, if you keep doing this, and it's going to lead to this, and then this is going to happen. And you're just like, right. I'm not a psychic, but I can tell you that that's like a pretty clear unfolding of events. And the quote was like, if the psychic's able to identify, oh, this is a person of very high consciousness, now all of a sudden there's no clear path, because they're now all of a sudden not making choices from these engraved habit lanes. They're now all of a sudden freely moving around and saying, oh, you know what? I've had the same reaction 1,000 times to this situation. Wait a minute. I'm a conscious, sovereign, thoughtful individual. I could actually make a totally new choice. Wait, how about if I did this? How about if I said this? And now you completely just shift the direction that you're going. And that's why music is amazing, because when you're playing in a band on stage or you're recording in a studio, you're all in that kind of state. That's right. Great jazz, great live music is you're all there together. And, I've had shows where we'll be in such that place that we'll look at each other and be like, what song did we just play? Okay, what song are we supposed to play next? Oh my gosh, are we about to play the same song twice and literally not know if we're about to end the song and then just play it again? we just played that or not because we were really here for it, you know?
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah. So,
Uh,
it's all, interconnected.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I want to ask you a practical question real quick. We are just about an hour in, and
Oh, yeah.
so I'll offer two options. We can stop this conversation with Zoom and then start recording again and go for another 30 or 40 minutes as a part two, or we can talk for another 15 to 20 minutes on this conversation as one contiguous conversation. So I'll ask your preference on that and see
Ooh.
what you'd like to do.
Oh,
And we could go more than 15 to 20 minutes in a contiguous. It's just, I know the attention span thing is
that's
probably
what I
going
was
to
going
kill
to ask. What do you think? Do people prefer having a new and like fresh kind of, okay, here's a new, fresh part two of an episode? Do you think that that's more interesting for people? Because I'm totally cool with that. If that's what you think people would
Okay.
prefer.
Well, and we can pick right up where we are now,
Right.
and but yeah, it would be part two. So
Okay.
if you're game for that, I'll just stop the recording. We'll call this part one, and then
Yeah.
we'll jump in and do. Okay, all right, let's do that because I would like that because then we can give ourselves license to continue for a little bit longer rather than
Cool.
feeling the pressure of like, oh, we should probably bring it down because
Right.
people are not going to. But my people that are subscribed are used to long form, are used to
Yeah.
these longer conversations, so they're
Yeah.
cool. So
Cool.
anyway, to you all in the audience, Spotify and YouTube. We're going to close this one down. But basically, it's just a Zoom thing. We're going to stop recording and then start recording again. I'll release the conversations maybe a few days apart so that you have time to take this one in and then start with the new one. So we will say au revoir for now, and then we'll pick back up in a second conversation.